June 2024. A month etched in the memory of Kenya. It began with a simmering discontent, a frustration brewing beneath the surface. The youth of Kenya, burdened by economic hardship and disillusioned by rampant corruption, had reached their limit. The Finance Bill 2024, perceived as tone-deaf to their plight, became the tipping point. Thousands took to the streets, their voices echoing with chants of "No more taxes" and "We demand accountability." Nairobi, the nation's vibrant capital, became a stage for their outrage. What started as peaceful demonstrations were met with a brutal response from the authorities. The air filled with tear gas, the crack of batons against flesh, the chilling sound of gunshots. Unarmed protesters, their only weapons, their voices and their unity, fell victim to the very forces meant to protect them. Lives were lost, dreams shattered, and a nation mourned. The events of June 2024 served as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the simmering tensions that lay beneath the surface of Kenyan society. A generation had risen, fueled by anger and a yearning for change. Their voices, though silenced by violence, would not be forgotten. In the face of mounting pressure and international condemnation, the government's response was swift but superficial. The controversial finance bill was withdrawn, a move touted as a victory for the people. President Ruto dismissed most of his cabinet, promising a leaner, more accountable government. However, for the youth who had witnessed the brutality firsthand, these gestures rang hollow. The wounds ran deeper than policy changes. The blood spilled on the streets of Nairobi demanded justice, not just concessions. The skepticism towards the government was palpable. We've heard it all before, echoed from the streets and online forums. The youth, having tasted their collective power, demanded systemic reform, a dismantling of the corrupt structures that had plagued Kenya for too long. The government's attempts at appeasement were seen as a desperate attempt to quell the unrest, rather than a genuine commitment to change. The youth, emboldened by their newfound voice, refused to be placated. They demanded accountability, transparency, and a seat at the table where decisions about their future were being made. The struggle was far from over. In the digital age, the battle for hearts and minds is often fought online. The June 2024 protests were no different. Social media platforms, particularly TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram, became vital tools for mobilization, information dissemination, and solidarity. Hashtags like #RutoMustGo and #JusticeForVictims trended globally, amplifying the voices of the Kenyan youth and garnering international attention. Videos of the protests, often captured on smartphones, provided raw and unfiltered accounts of the events, bypassing traditional media outlets. The immediacy and authenticity of these images resonated deeply, galvanizing support both within Kenya and across the globe. Social media became a space for mourning, for sharing information, for organizing future actions. It also allowed for the formation of a new kind of leadership, one that was decentralized and organic. No longer were charismatic figureheads essential to spearhead movements. Instead, a collective consciousness emerged, fueled by shared anger and a desire for a better future. This digital activism transcended geographical boundaries, inspiring similar youth-led movements across Africa and beyond. The June 2024 protests highlighted the power of social media as a double-edged sword, a tool for both oppression and liberation. Section 4, Unveiling the Truth, the Blood Parliament documentary, and its fallout. In April 2025, nearly a year after the June protests, BBC Africa Eye released Blood Parliament, a documentary that sent shockwaves through Kenya. The film meticulously pieced together the events of that fateful month, using footage from the protests, eyewitness accounts, and expert analysis. It exposed the brutal reality of the government's crackdown, identifying specific security officers involved in the shootings of unarmed protesters. One such officer, John Kaboi, was identified through a combination of footage and witness testimonies. The documentary showed him firing live ammunition into a crowd of fleeing protesters. The image of Kaboi, his face contorted in a grimace, became synonymous with the state's violence. The government's reaction to the documentary was swift and predictable. Public screenings were blocked, citing concerns of public unrest. Kenya Kwanza MPs accused the BBC of bias and inciting violence. However, the attempts to stifle the truth only served to further incense the public. The documentary, shared widely online, reignited the outrage and fueled demands for justice. Section 5. The fight continues. Activism and societal impact in the aftermath. The release of Blood Parliament marked a turning point, but it was not the end. The documentary, while shedding light on the atrocities committed, also served as a catalyst for continued activism. The youth, far from being intimidated by the government's attempts at censorship, doubled down on their demands for justice and accountability. The calls for an independent inquiry into the June 2024 events intensified. Civil society groups reported a surge in youth engagement, with many actively participating in forums and initiatives aimed at promoting transparency and accountability within the government. The protests and the subsequent documentary had ignited a fire in the hearts of young Kenyans. They were no longer content to be passive observers in the shaping of their nation's destiny. The movement, characterized by its leaderless and tribeless nature, continued to challenge the traditional power structures, forcing a reassessment of the relationship between the government and the governed. The fight for a just and equitable Kenya was far from over, but the spirit of resistance kindled in the fires of June 2024 burned brighter than ever. Section 6. Shaping the Future. Challenges, Opportunities, and the Unwavering Spirit of Kenya's Youth. The road ahead for Kenya is fraught with challenges. The economic hardships that fueled the initial protests persist. Justice for the victims of the June 2024 crackdown remains elusive. The government, despite its promises of reform, continues to grapple with accusations of corruption and impunity. Yet amidst these challenges, a glimmer of hope persists. The youth of Kenya, having tasted their collective power, are no longer willing to accept the status quo. They are the torchbearers of a new era, one defined by a commitment to transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. The protests, the documentary, and the ongoing activism have all contributed to a seismic shift in the political landscape. The youth are engaging in political discourse, demanding a seat at the table, and holding their leaders accountable. They are harnessing the power of technology to amplify their voices, mobilize support, and advocate for change. The journey towards a truly democratic and equitable Kenya is long and arduous, but the unwavering spirit of its youth offers a beacon of hope. They are the generation that dares to dream of a brighter future, and they are the ones who will fight to make that dream a reality.